All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar, the Small Business Growth Formula, how to create your one-page growth plan. My name is McLaughlin, and I will be your webinar host and presenter for today. All right, so some quick housekeeping. First up, this presentation comes with a one-page growth plan Google Doc, and I'm going to drop this link in the chat right now, but this is linked up in the slides, and you'll have access to this. So just to quickly demo this, this is the master file, so you're not going to be able to edit this document. So what you'll do is go up to File at the top left, click on Make a Copy, and then you can rename it whatever you'd like to. Choose where you want to save it in Google Drive, and then once you click Make a Copy, you'll have your own version that you can then edit. If you have any questions, please put those in the chat, and there will be a Q&A section at the end of this webinar. But just to make sure everyone can access that chat, if you can just quickly go there and type in how many Main Street ROI trainings you've attended. And yes, we are recording. So what's going to happen is tomorrow morning, you're going to get an email with a link to the recording. You'll have the slides linked up in there as well, and a third link for this one-page marketing plan Google Doc. All right, so what we're going to cover today, 2 key marketing concepts. We're going to go over the marketing investor mindset and the 4 pillars framework. Then we're going to create your 2026 marketing vision and set some growth goals and talk about budget. We'll lay your marketing foundation, and we'll talk about some kind of some low-hanging fruit in terms of conversion rate optimization and some tracking fundamentals. We'll talk about how and where to invest in traffic and certain budget allocations that we recommend. We'll talk about how we can help, and we've got a free offer for you, and then we'll move into the live Q&A. So who am I and why listen to me? Again, my name is McLaughlin, and I've had a few different roles here at Main Street ROI. First, I was an ad analyst. So at one point, I managed over $50,000 a month in ad spend for both lead gen and e-commerce businesses in Google Ads. And I've since transitioned to more of a content-focused role. So I work with our team to prepare our newsletter, which you'll see every week if you're signed up for a newsletter, video content, and webinars and stuff like that. All right, so this is the first key marketing concept, first key concept, and there's 3 sub-ideas for this concept, the marketing investor mindset. So the first sub-idea is that marketing is not a cost. It should really be viewed as an investment. And the problem with viewing marketing as a cost is that you're likely to underinvest. So for example, if you're running, I'm just going to use Google Ads as an example. If you're running Google Ads, there's a certain threshold of data that's really required in order for the ads to even have a chance at producing a return. And so in that respect, if you view marketing as a cost, you're likely to underinvest, and the ads might not ever become profitable. Whereas if you view marketing as an investment, and for every dollar you invest, you get 2 back or 5 back, or whatever the case may be, then you're more likely to invest what you would need to in order to see the growth that you want to see in your business. All right, the second sub-idea is diversification. So you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Not diversifying can be pretty risky. So if you're overly reliant on a single source of traffic to your website, then if something were to happen to that source of traffic, then your business is potentially at risk. And I actually have an example for this. So a while back, a business came to us, and they were in the middle of a website redesign. So the company that they hired to do this redesign for their website, for whatever reason, they didn't put redirects in place. And so they were really overly reliant on Google traffic, and because of this botched website redesign, they lost that source of traffic for their business, and eventually the business went under. We weren't able to help them in time. So it's potentially very dangerous to have to be too overly reliant on one source. As far as Google Ads goes, that might be an issue in the way of policy issues. So I know I've seen this personally with account suspensions. So there's something that changes with the website or with the ads, or in some way Google's policies are violated. And it could be that the account flies under the radar for a while until one day the automated system picks something up, realizes it's against Google policy, and flags the account. So if you're overly reliant on Google Ads traffic, well then, again, that puts your business at risk. So we want to diversify. We want to invest in different sources of traffic for our business. All right, and the third sub-idea is reallocation. So we want to double down on winners and cut our losses. And reallocation can happen between channels or within channels. So for example, if we're running both Google Ads and Facebook ads, and we find that Google Ads is actually performing better, then we'd want to move budget out of Facebook and into Google. And similarly within channels, if we're finding that we've got a few different campaigns running, and maybe there's one campaign that's clearly the winner, one that's the loser, obviously we want to move budget out of campaigns that aren't working and into campaigns that are. All right, and now we're at key concept number 2, which is the 4 pillars framework. So here we've got an equation: revenue equals traffic times conversion times value, and then we need tracking to measure our results. So the first pillar is traffic, and of course we need traffic to get leads and sales for our business. However, it's often not the biggest leverage point to driving more sales. And I say that because oftentimes business owners think, well, if I want to double my revenue, I have to double the amount of traffic that I get onto my website. And it's actually just not true. There are other things that we can do instead of just going all in on traffic. The second pillar is conversion. So this is ultimately what we want to get: more leads and sales. And we can actually double our sales by just doubling our conversion rate on the website. So in that case, we're just we're utilizing the traffic that we're currently getting more effectively because we're increasing the conversion rate of our website. Third pillar is tracking. So you can't improve what you can't measure. And proper tracking is going to show us what's working so that we can then improve it. And it's especially true of advertising because when you set up these ad campaigns, they don't by default include conversion tracking. That's something separate that you have to set up, and it requires installing tracking code on the website. And the purpose for that is, for example, for running ads, and the ad platform can see that we're getting impressions and clicks, but once that user goes to our website, the ad platform doesn't know what's happening. And so we have to set up tracking to send that information back so that something like Facebook ads or Google ads knows that when someone clicked on an ad, they went to our website, they submitted a form, or they called us, or they made a purchase. And so we have to set up that tracking. Otherwise, we're just sending people to our website, and then we don't really know what happens after that. So we wouldn't be able to tell what campaigns are performing or where to reallocate budget because we don't know what's working and what's not working. So we really have to set up tracking. And then the fourth pillar is customer value. So higher customer value means that we can invest more money to acquire new customers. And some examples of that would be raising our fees a little bit, upselling to additional products or services, or even cross-selling to other products and services. And I actually have a personal example of this. So as far as upsells go, when my wife and I got our 2 cats, we were talking about the litter situation, and we heard about this self-cleaning litter box called the Litter Robot. And so I went on their website and I was looking at the product, and I added it to my cart. And this is just the base unit, but what they had on their site was a lot of upsell opportunities. So there's like the litter guard that clicks on the front that you can add. There's like a little step thing that you can attach to the front of it as well. They also have their own brand of litter and the bags and all of these other things that they were telling me that I could, add on to my purchase to make my life easier, to improve my cat's experience with this product. And I'm sure that they're able to really increase their overall customer value because they have these upsells in place. Whereas if they were just selling the product and they didn't let me know, the customer, about these additional things that I can add to, really make the most out of this product, they're leaving money on the table. And as far as cross-selling goes, an example of that might be, you go to the dentist to get your teeth cleaned, and they say, okay, well, you're getting your teeth cleaned. Just so you know, if you were interested in getting a teeth whitening, you would have to get them cleaned anyway. So we're actually running a promo right now for discounted teeth whitening. And so if you want, you can tack that on at a discount. Otherwise, if you wanted to get your teeth whitened in the future, you would have to get another cleaning and then pay for the teeth whitening. So you're kind of saving money now by just tacking it on, as opposed to making that decision later. So in that sense, they would be communicating an additional service and making it make sense for the customer, and again, increasing customer value as a result. And typically businesses that have the highest customer value are going to dominate the market. So as far as how this works for, or the implications of this for advertising, let's say that you want to run Google search ads, and you do your keyword research and you find that keyword clicks are going to cost about $5 per click. And let's say that your conversion rate on the website is 2%. So if you have a 2% conversion rate, clicks are $5, you need 50 clicks to get a customer. So you're paying $250, 50 times $5, $250 to acquire a customer. Now, if your customer value isn't worth at least $250, then you're effectively paying more money to acquire that customer than that customer is worth to your business. And conversely, if you have a competitor who again is paying $5 a click, but they've got a higher customer value, so they, for whatever reason, maybe they've increased their fees a little bit, they position themselves as a premium version of whatever this product or service is, upsells, cross sells in place, they're able to get that customer value up to $500. Well, they can afford to pay $250 to acquire that customer because they know that customer is worth $500 to the business. So in that respect, if your customer value isn't high enough, you couldn't afford to run Google Ads, which means you'd be missing out on the visibility and scale that comes with that, whereas a competitor who does have a higher customer value would be able to take advantage of that platform. So I say that because there are other implications to not having a customer value that's as high as it could be. So question for you, how much is your typical customer worth? All right, so now that we've talked about these 4 pillars, we're going to put them into the equation. So for example, if we have 100 website visitors and we've got a 1% conversion rate on the website, and our customer's worth $500 to the business, then we've generated $500 in revenue. And again, I started this off by talking about traffic and how we might not have to double traffic. In this case, if we just increased each one of these by 25%, so instead of 100 visitors, we have 125. Instead of a 1% conversion rate on the website, we have a 1.25% conversion rate. And instead of a $500 customer value, we've increased that by 25%. So their customer value is now $625. And then we multiply these together, we've generated $976 in revenue. And it's not quite double, but it's almost double the revenue by just increasing each one of these by 25%, as opposed to doubling our traffic. So I just wanted to, communicate the power of utilizing these other pillars instead of, just investing a bunch of money in traffic. All right, so the 3-step planning process. First, we're going to set your vision. So define your growth goal and marketing budget for 2026. We'll lay the foundation and talk about some conversion and tracking tactics before we invest in traffic. And then finally, talk about investing in traffic and what are the primary channels that we'd want to select, and how would we want to break up our budget. So first step, set your marketing vision. So what does your growth goal look like for this year? So imagine it's December, it's the end of the year. What growth needs to happen in your business for you to feel like this was a really good year for you? And I've got 3 different buckets here. Moderate growth, so growing your business by revenue by 10 to 20%. Aggressive growth, which would be growing between 20 and 40%. And hyper growth, which would be growing by 40% or more. And then what's your marketing budget? So here we're just going to use a percentage of current revenue. And remember, this is an investment, not a cost, because we're going to be using these marketing dollars strategically. So if we match our growth rate to the investment, then for moderate growth, so to grow between 10 and 20%, we would need to invest 4% of current revenue. If we want to grow between 20 and 40%, we'd need to invest 8% of current revenue. And if we want to grow by 40% or more, we would have to invest at least 12% of current revenue. So I'm going to break down the math on our 1-page marketing plan. All right, so current annual revenue, just to make the numbers simple, start at $1 million. So let's say that's what our current revenue is. And our growth goal is to grow by 25%. So we're in the aggressive range here. That means that if we're going to grow by 25%, ultimately our revenue goal is going to be $1.25 million. And if we're matching the growth, we're matching the investment percentage for the growth that we want to have in our business. 8% of revenue would be $80,000 this year that we'd have to invest. And if we divide that by 12, that brings us to our monthly budget for marketing. So it would be $6,666 in order to grow our business by 25%. All right, step 2, lay your marketing foundation. So again, we don't want to jump straight into traffic. It's a common mistake. And here I have a kind of a visual to illustrate this analogy. So in this example, we've got someone holding a bucket filled with water. The water is our traffic investment. And here, this person is blindfolded, which indicates that they don't have tracking set up, so they can't actually see that their traffic investment is leaking out of the bucket. And these holes would indicate a lower conversion rate. So we're basically missing out on the benefit of that traffic because our website isn't really set up to convert people as effectively as it could be. So here we're walking around blindfolded, we're losing money, and this is not the scenario that has to happen if we just kind of get our fundamentals in place. So conversion and tracking are the marketing foundation. We want to make sure that we're utilizing these tactics so we make the most of our investment. And here I've got some kind of low-hanging fruit as far as conversion optimization. So first step, we want to have a strong call to action above the fold on our website, and potentially a sticky header with a phone number. So what that means is, if I go to this landing page here, above the fold just means what loads without me having to scroll down. So what do I see as soon as the page loads, whether that's on desktop or mobile? And here I've got what is clearly a button. Without reading any text, I already know visually what action I'm supposed to take because we're using some contrast here with color And it's pretty clear this is if I want to move forward, this is what I need to do. I also have a header up here with a phone number. So if it's important that people call you or even submit a form, you can put buttons up here. Then what you can do is put that information in the header of your website and then add some code to make it what's called a sticky header. And what that means is that as I scroll down the page, that header stays with me at every step. So I don't actually have to go and find that phone number or wherever that button is to book an appointment. It's just with me at every step of the way. And this may seem pretty straightforward, but you'd really be surprised when I audit websites just how often I'll see, lead gen company, they want to drive phone calls and the phone number is only present on the contact page. Or it'll be on every page, but it'll be way at the bottom in the footer. And if we're sending people to our website, especially if we're investing in ads, we want to make sure that what we're doing is reducing as much friction for people as possible on our website. We want them to do as little work as possible. We don't want them to have to try and fight to find whatever the information is that they're looking for. It should be front and center. And certainly as far as making a purchase or contacting us or whatever action that we want them to take is concerned, we need to make it as easy and obvious as possible for people. All right, next one is using customer-focused copy versus company-focused. So what I mean by that is, when somebody visits the website, you probably the first thing that they see should not be, our business was founded in this year, and here's a little bit about the owners and all of that. It's just focused on the company, whereas someone who doesn't know you, all they're trying to find out right now is if you can help them solve whatever problem they have. They're not really interested in the backstory and the company information. That can be on the about page, but it's definitely not something we'd want to lead with. Probably not on the home page, and certainly not for any kind of page that we're sending paid traffic to. We also want to present a unique selling proposition. So why should people choose to do business with you versus every other option available? What makes you special versus competitors? We also want to make sure that we have separate pages for different products or services. So sometimes, especially if this is a new website, I've seen a kind of a very long one-page website where they'll just have everything that they do, all of their service information, all of it's on one page that scrolls. It's a very long scroll, and they might have anchor links set up that will automatically scroll people down to whatever section of that page is that's relevant to what they clicked on. But in terms of ranking, it's just not possible for Google to rank a one-page website for all of those different things. We would need separate pages to do that. So definitely want to have, create separate pages for different products or services that we offer. Adding a lead magnet as well to capture contact information. So despite everything that we do in terms of improving our conversion rate on the website, ultimately it's only ever going to get so high. So, whether that's 2% or 4% or 10%, I mean, there is a limit ultimately to how, the rate at which we can convert people on our website. And so the next question is, if someone's not ready, maybe they're just looking for information, they're just kind of curious, they don't really know who you are. And certainly depending on the industry, where maybe multiple touch points are required for someone to take action, it's helpful to have their contact information so that we as the business can reach out to them and engage with them. The alternative is that we have to hope that they turn to Google and search for us again and come back to our site. Or if we're investing in ads, we have to pay money again to get them back to the website. And if we have their contact information, then we can sidestep all of that. So one helpful tactic is to have some kind of a lead magnet on the website. which is maybe a free guide, some kind of offer that's helpful and genuinely useful to people who visit the site, that you trade in exchange for their email. And for us, we actually do this on our website. So on mainstreetroi.com, we have, by default, it's the SEO checklist that we will send people in exchange for an email. And then we add them to our newsletter and engage with them. And this really is helpful, because I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people who say, you know, I've been, I haven't reached out yet. I've been on your newsletter for like a year. I've been getting your emails, and things haven't really improved in that year, and I think I'm finally ready to move forward. And so in that sense, we've, for the past year, communicated our authority. We've sent them helpful information. Maybe they haven't opened every email. They've probably opened very few, but at least it helps to stay top of mind, position ourselves as authorities in the space, and re-engage with people rather than having to pay to get them back to our website. Another benefit of having people's contact information, as far as advertising goes, is that that's first-party data that we own. So if we have a list that's big enough, we can upload that list to different ad platforms and set up what are called remarketing campaigns. So basically, you know, sending ads to people who have already been to our website, they're somewhat familiar with what we do, and we're trying to re-engage specifically with those people. So we have their information now, and we can upload that list. And then lastly, following up with leads via autoresponders. So just, you know, like an email autoresponder that has different sequences, newsletters, which I just spoke about, and promos. All right, and then we have our tracking fundamentals checklist. So you want to set up Google Analytics 4 and conversion events in GA4. It's all free. May as well set them up, and that way you have that data. There are some settings that you'll want to adjust. So if you're just setting up your GA4 account, for example, by default, I think it's 2 months. They'll save your data up to 2 months, but you can change that to 14 months, just so you have more data to look at. But you'll want to set that up. I'd also actually add to this list Microsoft Clarity, which is a tool that I've started using for my accounts. And what's nice about Microsoft Clarity, it's also free, but they'll actually record sessions of people who visit your site. So you can go in to Clarity, and you can see actual recordings of people on your website, where their mouse goes, what they clicked on, what pages they went to, how long they spent on those pages, if they were inactive on those pages, if they clicked on things that maybe looked like a link, but you know, for you designing the site, you didn't realize, oh, I see that this may have been perceived as something clickable, and it's not until you actually have that behavioral data to review that you realize, you know, people are clicking on this and it's not clickable, which would be frustrating from a consumer standpoint. So, you know, downloading or just, you know, signing up for Microsoft Clarity and getting your site all set up there. Phone call tracking, specifically for ad campaigns. And I found that really helpful, because from just a reporting standpoint, you know, if we're running ads and you see that there's a bunch of phone calls come in, well, that looks great from a reporting perspective, but what were those calls actually like? You know, were they handled well by the sales team? Were they actually relevant? So an example of this might be in, just because I've seen this so often in Google Ads, where keyword targeting is maybe not specific enough, or competitor businesses are not added as negative keywords. And so what would happen is somebody is searching for a local dentist like Smith Dentistry, and they're searching in Google by name. We're targeting a keyword like dentist near me. Sounds like a high intent keyword, except that depending on the match type we select, Google is going to consider that relevant and match our ad for that search query. And so, you know, in this case, somebody's searching for a competitor of ours by name. Google says, oh, well, that's a dentist near them. I'm going to serve your ad. And so they click on the ad thinking it's the competitor, call the business, call you, thinking you're the business owner for this competitor, and trying to book an appointment or whatever, and then front desk can't find them in the system. Basically, from a reporting standpoint, it looks like all of these phone calls are coming in, only to realize that a lot of them are wrong number dials. And so that's just completely wasting the ads budget. But setting up call tracking, which includes call recording, would be really helpful for determining that, instead of just taking those, taking that reporting at face value and saying, oh, we're getting all these phone calls, everything's great. Setting up ad network conversion code. So like I mentioned earlier, conversion tracking is something that requires installing code, tracking code on the site. It's not something that I've found to be intuitive, but it's very important, to the degree that I wouldn't even recommend advertising at all if tracking isn't set up. Now, what's nice though is that there are some tools to make it a little easier. So rather than manually installing tracking code on your site, what you can do is use a tool like Google Tag Manager. That's what I've used in the past, and that's what our team tends to use, which does require installing the container script. So you do have to install one thing on the website, but from there you would use the tag manager interface, and there's a lot of YouTube videos and tutorials that would show you exactly what to click on and what to do to set up that those tracking tags and get conversion tracking all set up. But very, very important. And then lastly, setting up a CRM to track your customer value, cost per lead, and just overall to have a single database that you can refer to that houses all of your customer data. All right, so now we're at step 3, invest in traffic. So when we've surveyed our audience, one of the top questions we've gotten is, what is the one best source of website traffic? And the answer is there isn't one. There's no magic bullet for this. There's no one best source of traffic. It's really important to diversify and to get your traffic from different channels, especially in the event that something were to happen and that channel gets shut off. So some primary channels would be search engine optimization, so improving organic visibility on search engines. Advertising, in some respect, it's going to depend on the business and who you want to reach, but Google ads, search ads are a popular one. Facebook ads, Instagram, LinkedIn if you're B2B, but some kind of advertising. Organic social media, and email marketing. And this isn't an exhaustive list. There are other traffic channels to invest in, but these are really the main ones. All right, so how are we going to allocate our budget? So first, we're going to find our monthly budget in the one-page growth plan. Then we're going to use a portfolio approach. And we recommend a pie chart distribution for these primary channels. So what we tend to recommend is spending 35% of your marketing budget, whatever that is, on SEO, spending 45% on ads, 10% on organic social media, and 10% on email marketing. And then lastly, auditing performance quarterly and making adjustments based on where we're seeing a return. Okay, and here I've got 3 different budget allocation examples, one for each growth bucket, so moderate growth, aggressive growth, and hyper growth. So for moderate growth, the first one, again, using $1 million in annual revenue as our baseline. If we want to grow moderately, we would have to invest 4% of current revenue, which would give us an annual budget of $40,000. Divided by 12 gives us our monthly budget. So $3,333 per month we would need to invest in marketing. And if we use this pie chart organization, then about $1,200 per month of that would go towards SEO, $1,500 a month towards ads, and then $333 for social and email. For ads, I see this as $1,500 a month is appropriate for basically one ad channel. I don't think that 2 different channels would be possible. And even then it would depend on the channel. So like LinkedIn, for example, I don't think would be possible at this budget for most businesses. But this is just the first example. For aggressive growth, so instead of investing 4%, we're investing 8% of revenue, and that brings us to an annual budget of 80,000. So these numbers are basically doubled. At $2,300 a month for SEO, that gives us more options in terms of improving keyword rankings, doing technical SEO, improving backlinks. There's just more SEO work that can be done each month, which means that we're going to rank faster organically, although SEO is kind of more of a long-term process. Now with $3,000 a month in ads, well, now LinkedIn is looking more like a viable option if that's relevant for our business. If not, we could maybe do 2 different channels here, but again, we have more options. And $667 per month roughly on social and email. And then lastly, hypergrowth gives us a monthly budget of $10,000, and there we have a lot more options. And just to kind of bring this to life, I wanted to include some case studies, just because we have a pretty clear templated approach, but there is no real truly one-size-fits-all process for this. It's really going to depend on the business and certain nuance. So I just wanted to include some real examples of what this would actually look like. So the first example is a memorial tree supplier. For them, they started slow, tested, and ramped up. So they started with a low budget SEO, added Google Ads 6 months later. So they didn't start with this full pie chart. They just started with SEO, low budget. Then they later added ads, tested Facebook ads, but found that it wasn't really working. So they reinvested that in Google Ads based on results. And then 3 years later, they quadrupled their Google Ads budget. And then they doubled their SEO budget. So in this case, they kind of, went in slow, saw what worked, tested ads, moved things around, and reallocated, diversified, and that worked for them. Next, we have a school supply manufacturer. So here they actually did start with kind of the full pie chart, SEO, Google Ads, Bing Ads, Facebook Ads. After a couple of years, they increased their Facebook Ads budget by 25%. They tripled their SEO budget 3 years later. And then Google Ads and Facebook Ads budgets were increased by 25%. So in this case, they did start with a pretty broad spectrum of different channels, and then they just added more budget to what they found was producing the biggest return for them. Then lastly, we have a fence contractor, and they just really wanted to remove their dependence on referrals. So they were a local fence company with a great reputation and a desire to scale. And so they did a website redesign and a SEO tune-up and a content project. Then they launched Google Ads with a test budget, and based on the results they were seeing, decided to double that budget and plan to further scale up with SEO and ads. All right, so how we can help. So we do have an offer to book a free 30-minute growth plan strategy session. So that call would be with me. So if that sounds interesting to you, then type in chat growth plan in the chat, and I'll reach out to you afterwards. But basically, we'd hop on a call, talk about your business, what your revenue growth goal is for this year, and then we'd try to figure out a plan to get you there. So we'll plan your one-page growth plan together and get feedback on budget and what channels really make sense for you. And just to recap, an overview of the planning process. First, you're going to create your vision, calculate your monthly marketing budget, set up your conversion fundamentals, set up your tracking fundamentals, allocate that budget across primary traffic channels, and then determine next steps for each traffic channel based on quarterly audits. So with that, we have a little time left, and we will now move into the live Q&A. So if you have a question, please go ahead and put that in the chat, and I will see if I can help. And just while we're waiting, again, what's going to happen is tomorrow morning, you're going to get an email with a link to this recording, the slides, and also a link to the one-page marketing plan as well. So I'm not seeing any questions. If you do think of one after the fact, just go ahead and just send me an email. You can reply to the newsletter email that you got that promoted this webinar, and just let me know your question, and I'll make sure to get you an answer. So with that, I think we can probably close. Thanks so much for attending the presentation today, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye for now.